Hi, Abby. I just finished teaching my 7 a.m. Tuesday class, and then I filmed some new content, which honestly is some of my favorite time that I get to spend. It's my alone time. I just move and listen to my body and stretch and flow, and it's kind of the only time of my week, of my month, of my year that I just completely zone out and don't adhere to any type of structure or template or schedule. And it just gives me that creative release and freedom. And it's really the time that I have to connect with my body. And that's also why I prioritize movement so much and why I champion movement so much, because I just know that feeling, the afterburn, the endorphin rush, the moving meditation element, the endless benefits you get from exercise. There's no comparison to the benefits of consistent exercise. This has been proven over and over again that no matter what medicine you take, no matter what you eat, obviously this is all within reason, but nothing compares to exercise. And that feeling of sweat dripping down my eyeballs and watching it drip onto my mat and feeling it go up my nostrils, and all of it is just those sensations that are incomparable and nothing replaces it. And I can't speak to movement and the benefit of movement enough.
Lindsay Jang, thank you so much for being here for Move, Sweat to Discover.
Thanks for having me.
When I was doing a little bit of researching, aka stalking, I was a little bit floored with all of your kind of business ventures, achievements, accolades, so they say. I'm just going to run through a couple.
Okay.
Just to embarrass you.
Great,
okay?
thanks.
But no, that's just, they're just the basic ones.
Okay.
So co-founder of Yardbird and Ronin here in Hong Kong.
Yes.
With a new restaurant concept coming up in London called, correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Due?
Due is correct. London is TBD, but
Okay.
you're not wrong because I'm sure the internet still says London.
Yes, the internet still says London. Co-founder of Family Form, a 55-minute mat-based infrared full-body sculpting experience.
Yes.
Co-founder of creative communications agency Hecho.
Yes.
I'm going to stop there because we're just going to we're going to go through it all. You're restaurateur, fitness expert, businesswoman, influencer.
I hate that
Love
one.
that word.
Leave that out.
Mother. So you really have created a name for yourself. So I wanted to talk about your journey.
Yes.
Just from the very beginning. You're the definition of a true entrepreneur. How did you set up your businesses and create this kind of Lindsay Jang empire? Just tell me from the start, like, what did you study in college? Like, what did you even want to do when you grew up?
I still don't know. I think that's I've discovered I most likely have ADHD, which the more I read about it, the more I start to see there's a lot of entrepreneurs actually who have ADHD.
Okay.
Then it's like that seems to be a positive side effect of it, maybe. I've never set out to build. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I didn't set out to build a name for myself. As a very young child, I was an exhibitionist. I wanted to be a dancer, a singer, an actor, something in performing arts. Like being center stage was sort of like something I fell in love with when I was a child. My mom was always playing pop music. Like I grew up dressed like Michael Jackson, Tina Turner. And what I realized as I got older is that I couldn't sing. And my mom never forced me to do anything. If I tried something and I didn't like it, she was like, oh, it's fine, which I wish she hadn't have done. I think I could have been a better dancer or a better whatever had she continued to push me. But on the flip side, it also let me explore a million different things. The entrepreneur side, I think, really came from watching my dad. My dad, I'm first generation on my dad's side. So my dad was born in Hong Kong, actually. My mom is Canadian, Scottish Canadian, like 7th generation. So she's just like, white Canadian.
Yeah.
But my dad, my grandparents didn't speak any English. So their whole thing was, immigrate to Canada, our kids go to university and become doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, something like that, right? Like that's the immigrant dream.
Yeah.
So my dad did that, became a civil engineer, hated every single second of it. The year I was born in 1981, my dad also loved to gamble, or he still loves to gamble probably, and not in a way where you've like come home and you've like lost your house and your car, but in a way where like it was very much just like my dad would go to this local fair that they had where I grew up in Edmonton in Canada, which is, there's less than 2 million people in this city, probably most famous for the hockey team, Wayne Gretzky, that's it, period. So they won the lottery the year I was born. He bought a ticket for like that you could win a dream home, you could win a physical gold brick. Like prizes were insane back then. So the year I was born, they won the gold brick. And gold was really low back then, so they took the cash. It was 100,000 Canadian dollars in 1981, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so my dad saved it, like probably paid off their mortgage, did a very fiscally responsible thing with that money. And then in 1984, he bought a restaurant in my hometown, which was like he grew up working in the restaurant business. His parents were like, the last thing we ever want you to do is work in the restaurant business. Then my dad bought a restaurant. It was like, obviously, I grew up working in our family restaurant. He was like, the last thing I want you to do is work in restaurants.
Yeah.
So then I had scholarships for French and science.
You can speak French?
No. Back then I did like IB French. So, most of it's based on like reading and writing comprehension, not necessarily like your language. And so I did maybe 2 years of university in Canada, and I literally changed my major every semester because I was just completely undecided.
Yeah.
And then I just realized that I didn't want to be in school. Like I wanted to explore and discover. I was like, I'd been in school for 13 years. And then just to go straight into another institution, like I just felt like I'm going to be like, okay, I went from one institution, now I'm going to be in another institution. And then like, is that going to spit me out? Now I'm going to be in another institution and that's my job, and then what happens?
Yeah.
And so based on the work ethic that I had cultivated through working in my family's business literally, I think I started being on the schedule from the age of 11.
Oh, wow.
So obviously as I grew up, I worked more, and all of the things. And so I had, not knowing at the time, but I already had sort of developed this independence and work ethic. So like I wasn't really scared about not going in like that typical path of, whatever I was supposed to do, right? Like take the scholarship, go to university, get a job.
Yeah.
And I was snowboarding a lot at this time, which will come later into our fitness story.
Okay.
And at the time I was going to a competition, most of my friends were like professional level snowboarders. And I was always like, in that mix, but not nearly as talented.
Right.
So there was a competition.
How old were you?
18, 19. Okay. So there was a competition in Big Bear in Southern California.
Yeah.
And it got canceled because there was no snow. And part of me was like, I want to go to New York. I just have always wanted, you grow up and you're like, this is the center of the universe. Yeah. Everything relevant happens there. I need to see it. That's sort of still my personality. And so I took that flight credit, and I was young. I think I must have only been 18. So my mom came with me.
Yeah.
And I had at that time I was in Calgary and I was hosting a television show.
Oh, wow.
For extreme sports.
Okay.
And so I don't know. And as a child, I had done commercials and like all this. I was the only part Asian person, like probably in the million people.
So you stood out.
So it was like, doesn't matter what
Yeah.
you look like, you're diverse.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh, maybe I'll go and like do acting in New York, which sort of was like part of how I felt when I was a kid and like
Okay.
this whole performing thing. But really it was like, this was after 9/11. So this was like 2002.
Okay.
So Department of Homeland Security had just been set up. It was not easy to go to the US and like work there or live there. And so
Even as a Canadian?
even as a Canadian, that's why I went as an actor. So I went to theater school. I like completely dropped out of all of my university stuff in Canada.
Yeah.
And was like, I'm going to go and study theater and get a student visa and just live in New York and just see what happens. And so I did that. And I studied theater and I had the best time and I did all those things. You get the agent, you do auditions, you do off Broadway, the whole thing. And of course, at the same time, I was bartending and waitressing and doing all that to actually pay your bills. Very cliche story. And then I also was like, I didn't necessarily I wasn't so tied to the acting stuff.
Right.
Like it's like winning the lottery, Like, of course there's very talented actors out there who get there on their own and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But this was also in 2002, 2003 when you would get a part or you would see like they would be casting and it would just say like non-white person, right? So that year, I guess I'm a non-white person, but like it's nothing like nowadays. Like if I went back in time and maybe attempted that career now and you have all kinds of people being cast for all kinds of roles.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, if you're not white and blonde and blue eyes, like good luck. You're always going to be like the supporting character.
What was your goal though? Were you like aiming to be like the Lucy Liu?
I mean, I guess, like you don't, I don't know if anyone's goals are like, I just want to be a character actor and like make a steady living. I think you have stars in your eyes or I had stars in my eyes and you're like, you want whatever you think that is, right? But I really didn't have any issue relinquishing that goal so what happened was I was working, in a really crazy Mexican restaurant. And then somebody that I worked with was kind of like, why do you work here? Like this place is a shithole. And I was like, I don't know. Like I make really good money. And they're like, you're in New York City. Like this is the place for dining, like you clearly, you have a skill set. You should go and work somewhere amazing, go and find one of these, I forget what the ranking is at that time, like New York 4-star restaurants. This was like before the Michelin Guide came to America or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Never thought about that. And ironically, I had like time out in my bathroom and like I was just flipping through new restaurant openings and I had seen that Nobu was opening in their Midtown location. And I really barely even knew what Nobu was.
Right.
It was like I was living under some type of rock. And then I was like, like, fuck it. I wrote a cover letter that was basically, I wish I would have kept it, but it just said like, to whoever gets this, I have no fine dining experience, but like, you won't regret giving me a chance. And that was it. It was like two sentences.
Love it.
And then I faxed it to whoever was hiring at Nobu. And I got the job. And, when they hire you, they're like, well, it usually takes at least, I think they said like 6 months for you to be a waiter, like a server. Like the training process is grueling and the testing and you run food and you're a busser and like there's all these steps involved, which I was like, great, I want to learn. I'm here to learn. Like when I took the test, they give you a test at the interview and it was like, what is Osetra? I had no idea that was caviar. And I'm like texting on my flip phone to Matt at the time. And I was like, what is Osetra? It's like, it's caviar. I was like, okay, caviar. And so they basically just tried to manage my expectations about like,
Right.
you know, when I would be a waiter or server, that was the position I was applying for.
Yeah.
And then I think within 6 weeks, I was a server.
Mm.
And then within like 6 months, I was a captain, which is like
Okay.
a head server basically on the floor. And then from there, I worked there for 4 years.
Wow.
I worked my way up to, you know, being like a head captain. I worked in the special events department. It was hands down like the most incredible job I've ever had. And then I actually felt that like that was the last job that I would ever need. Like not financially, but like I had learned everything that I wanted to learn from a hospitality perspective. And I felt like I had learned from the best.
Yeah.
And I was like, the next job I have, which at that point in my life was still going to be F&B because that's where I was. I was 25.
Right.
I was like, I guess like the next job in this field would be my own restaurant. And then I gave birth. My Lily, my daughter, was born in April of 2008, like literally when the financial crisis hit.
Yeah.
And it was just serendipitous. Like Matt and I had made plans to move to Japan, and then we got pregnant and we're like, well, we're not going to move to Japan, but we'll travel and just see where we want to end up.
Yeah.
And it was just perfect timing because like the US was imploding financially.
Yeah.
And so we left basically at that time, traveled the world with Lily and settled in Hong Kong
Okay.
because Matt had taken a job with Zuma when
Right.
Zuma opened here. And that's sort of how I landed in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you create Yardbird?
So Matt and I have been friends since we were 17. And so when we decided to be romantic, which is like the least romantic way of describing that, we had always like been concepting, you know, restaurants, and, you know, you're like, oh, well, what if we do this? Or what if we live here? And like, we had just been writing our own sort of restaurant story, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, you know, it's a love story. It's ideas. You're like thinking about building things together. And during our years in New York, he was working down the street at another very high-end Japanese restaurant. We were like 2 avenues away from each other. And so we were both working crazy, you know, 5-6 days a week. He was working crazier hours than me. And Sunday was usually our only mutual day off. And so we would go and eat yakitori. That was like our favorite thing. Every Sunday, let's say every second Sunday, we would eat at the same yakitori restaurant. And so by the time we were in Hong Kong and we were like really focusing on what our business plan was for what the restaurant was going to be that we opened after he was done at Zuma,
Yeah.
it had sort of really taken shape as yakitori. So like taking the inspiration from, you know, Nobu's service and fine dining, but without tablecloths, and he had worked for an incredible chef. So all the skills that Matt had learned from him, and then Matt went and worked for this yakitori restaurant for a few months in New York before we left. And so it just sort of, we put it all together, and that's what Yardbird is.
Yeah.
When like we wrote that business plan, we opened in 2011. I probably physically wrote it, you know, and back then a business plan was just words. Now it's like a Canva presentation, right? Back then it was just like a document describing things. But what I love about it is sometimes I go back and I read it, and it's still like almost 100%. That doesn't make sense, but nearly 99.9% accurate to what we had intended on building, you know, when we talked about it in 2009.
That's great.
So, you know, the music, the service, the food, everything about that is what we had envisioned. And I think, you know, of course things change over time, but like the core nature of what Yardbird was meant to be is still very much what it is even now on Winglock Street.
Yeah, it stayed really consistent over the years.
Yeah, and I think like it's the type of food as well that, you know, there's not much, this is it, you know, it's not, I don't want to say it's not creative, because obviously there's creativity in it.
Yeah.
But, the people that have worked with us, especially Matt's kitchen team,
Yes.
they have been with us since he worked at Zuma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like these guys are, they are specialists, and they just, they cut this fresh chicken every day into thousands of pieces. And there's not a lot of creativity in that. So it's interesting when, a lot of chefs want to come through and they want to stage or they want to spend time in the kitchen, and then I think a lot of Ronan is a little bit different. Ronan is more on the creative side, but like Yardbird, people don't really realize how much of a factory that kitchen, is just like, it's very systematic and driven by process. So obviously consistency comes out of that.
Yeah. Were any of the majors that you
No.
got involved with in college marketing? Because I always assumed
No.
that, I
Zero.
was,
But let's be honest. Like, did you go to school for marketing?
No.
No. And by no means am I going to say that anyone who does go to school for marketing shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I have come across and worked with people who have gone to school for marketing, and they definitely have a roster of skills in their toolbox that I wouldn't know necessarily how to define or name.
Yeah.
Although it comes out in we've worked together for years on that kind of stuff. But especially, and this goes for all of the brands that I have or have had. I've had many things that I've started and closed. All great learning experiences. But, Matt and I met working in a skate shop, like skate and snowboarding.
Okay.
So, back in the day, marketing before social media and before paid ads even online was stickers and t-shirts, right? Like, or any type of marketing for any business category was like, here's a pen, here's a pin. It was very physical. And so that's how we approached marketing Yardbird in the beginning, right? It was like the t-shirts and stickers. And like Instagram had launched the same year, I think 2011. And no one was using it for business. I don't even think we started a Yardbird account until maybe like the end of year 1 or year 2. And even then, it wasn't like a priority.
Yeah.
And so I also had no background or experience in like what a PR agency was. But because Matt was at Zuma, he had a PR machine behind him there, which is also sort of why we decided to stay in Hong Kong. We were thinking about opening Yardbird back in Canada.
Okay.
But, he had started to already build his name here. And, Hong Kong, I think we would have just been bored to death if we had moved back to Canada back then. Like, we weren't ready to. And, like, Hong Kong has been so instrumental, I think, in who we've become as people.
Yeah.
And marketing, I should also give credit to Tara, who's my sister. She started, Stacy, my sister, and Tara, my sister, both opened Yardbird with us. Stacy was on the backside, like admin, HR, blah, blah, blah. And Tara was in the front, like I had trained her to be a maitre d'.
Yeah.
And then she had gone to school. She graduated from McGill with a communications degree. And so we kind of just did all of this marketing by ourselves and created. Hecho was sort of just born out of like what we thought marketing was.
Yeah.
And I think it was just an interesting time because social media was becoming marketing, but it was nowhere where it is now, where like it is the number one thing that people spend money on and care about, right? Back then it was still like not
ads and magazines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I realized over the years and through all of the different brands and companies that I think the nature of just like I like to host, I like to entertain, I like people to have a good time, but you want to tell a story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what marketing is.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
Yeah.
with all your different projects and all your different brands, like how do you stay in your lane?
I don't know. I don't. I think that's like, you know, I have so many ideas
Yeah.
constantly. And what happens is like something I get interested in, if I just like go so far into it, you know, it happened with yoga, which also was a huge part of my life for a long time and still gives me that fundamental base of, you know, the consistency, practice, you know, and I don't like to get spiritual, but, you know, there was my teacher, I mean, I've had many yoga teachers, but the person that I would really call my teacher is such an example of, you know, a humble, egoless, generous person. And I just was so attracted to that. And I spent as much time learning from him, teaching with him, teaching for him as I could. Because I mean, I'm sure you've come across people in your life where you're like, this person is going to, and it's not transactional, but you're like, I'm going to absorb so much just from observing them, you know? And when I find people like that, you know, you just want to keep them close, you know, and that's colleagues, that's people that you work with, that's people that you want to continue to work with. And I think there's one thing that I have realized over the years is that like a lot of the people in my world daily, yourself included, I never silo people. It's not like, well, Abby only teaches fitness, you know, or this person only does that. It's like, I think it's so much more interesting to be able to see strengths in people and identify those as things that can be applicable to so many different scenarios. And I think it's such a limiting mindset to just pigeonhole things. You know? And that's why like I don't stay in my lane, because I'm like, well, I know how to do all these things. How is applying it to a restaurant different than applying it to a hotel, different than applying it to a fitness studio? You know, it's all the same thing. Right? We're providing a service. Yeah.
I definitely think that you are like your own brand. I wanted to talk to you about like your view on being like the face of a brand. Like how important do you think that is? Like, do you think it gives you like a bit of an edge over the rest, or?
So in the beginning, like it kind of happened by default, because quite honestly, if you look at where it started with Yardbird, it really, you know, it started, if we look at a starting line, you know, Matt would have had, you would assume that if you put your money on one of us, Matt could have gone and been like the celebrity chef, the everything, right? He never wanted to do any of that. And so by default, when press would come, you know, I would be the one that engaged with them, you know, and then I would go to the events and I would just end up doing all these things. And
is this your actress performer coming out?
I mean, I'm social, right? And then at that time, it was also like how I want people to come to my restaurant, right? It was obviously for business as well, and you want to bring them in and do interesting events and have the right people there. That's one thing I learned from Nobu as well. It's like you want the good crowd in your restaurant, and at the same time, like it's not for free. So like you want people to come, you want people to pay, you know. And there's this whole. It's not a game, but it's a game, right? Everyone's playing a game. It doesn't have to mean it's negative or like malicious. And so Matt just like he didn't care. He still doesn't. Like it's just not his thing. And so I guess naturally, you know, you go out more, people, you're in the press more. That's just what happens. You know, and so then with like any subsequent brand, like I've never named something after myself. No. I actually think I think there's more power in a brand, you know, and not in a person. Because like, what if something happens to me?
Yeah.
You know, I think there's so much more to family forum than me.
Mm.
Of course, as time goes on and like, let's just say there's more value in my name, then I can use that, right, to promote brands.
Yeah.
So yes, I think there's value in personal brand, but I have never set out with intention to build my own personal brand.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't have a website. I don't have I want to build things with people, you know, like I've actually never launched a business by myself. Maybe I will eventually, but I really enjoy working with people. I like teamwork.
Yeah.
I
Collaboration.
I love collaboration. I'm very cognizant of what I'm not good at, and I know that what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I am very aware that I have the luxury of being able to allocate the things I don't want to do to other team members.
Yeah.
You know, and find this balance with people you work with. So like you get to do what you like to do and you're good at, and I get to do what I like to do and I'm good at. And I don't need to have autonomy or like sole ownership of anything. That doesn't make me happy.
Let's talk about social media.
Okay.
Segue into that.
Yes.
Like obviously it's a part of, which I said is part of like business now.
Yeah.
Like how do you kind of feel about it and how do you use it? Obviously it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But like, do you take it seriously? Is it just fluff?
No, I definitely take it seriously.
Yeah.
I'm aware of its power. I'm also, you know, there's money to be made.
Yeah.
For sure. But I also I like that I have created a platform. I mean, I don't have a crazy following or anything like that, but I do feel like it's a place where I can share the things that I actually like or the things that I actually do and things that I actually think will help people, you know? No, I mean, I'm very aware that like oftentimes it's in vain, you know, it's like what makes you look better, but also usually that goes hand in hand with making you feel better. And so it just goes back to this anchor value that I have about hospitality and like having these spaces or having these experiences that improve people's quality of life. You know, like if they come to the restaurant, I hope they leave feeling better. If they come to the studio, I hope they leave feeling better, you know, and there's this, obviously the digital side to it can only be conveyed so much. But what I like is that I do have these real life places that should also give you that feeling, if that makes sense.
How often do you go on it?
Instagram?
Yeah.
Oh, probably. I mean, like I set my screen time limits.
Oh, you do?
I mean, only so that I can be like ignore for the rest of the day.
Yeah, because that's what I tried, and I was just like ignore.
So I set my screen time limit for Instagram or social media for like 2 hours a day, and I'd say like maybe 3 days out of the week, I get the notice of like I've hit that limit.
Yeah.
So I don't have any idea if that's a lot or not a lot. I know for a fact that I'm probably like everybody else who like you pick up your phone and your reflex is just to open Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, I almost wish, because like I don't like the messaging side in Instagram because like I'm very prompt with responses. I feel like that is something that I appreciate in people, and it's a quality that I really strive to maintain, is like a fast response.
Oh, really?
I don't care if it's email, WhatsApp, any channel you message me on, I will reply as fast as I possibly can.
Right.
So Instagram before would just be like recreational browsing.
Yeah.
But now if it's like I'm having conversations on there or I'm like organizing something and I used to just be like, please add me on WhatsApp, because to me, that's just an easier way to organize it.
Yeah.
But now more and more people are doing business on Instagram.
Yeah. I find that very intrusive.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like I kind of was like, I wanted to keep this as my entertainment. And I didn't really take it as seriously. But So now it's like, okay, it is work. Like
Yeah.
Instagram has become part of
Yeah.
work.
I feel like all of my things on my phone are just work, even WhatsApp,
Yeah,
you know,
I
so that's
know.
why I try and limit my hours, like responding to people. Sorry.
No, that wasn't targeted at you.
Yeah, I turn on my do not disturb sometimes. I try and
too.
like have boundaries around, because I now realize that a lot of the work that I do is actually on my phone.
All of it.
Yeah.
Like I forgot my computer this morning.
Yeah.
Well, not forgot, but like in my day, I didn't think I would need it.
Yeah.
And then I had like 30 minutes to kill. And normally I would like to work on my computer
Yeah.
versus my phone. But then I was actually like, I don't even need it actually.
Yeah.
Like I like it,
Yeah.
but I don't need it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just the official version of your phone.
Kind
right?
of. You're like, I just open my laptop and turn on WhatsApp. You know, it's the same shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your kind of segue from F&B to fitness, because family form is not your first foray into that scene,
That's true.
right?
I think it goes back to, you know, when I really fall in love with something, I'm just like all in,
Yeah.
right? So when I was snowboarding a lot, I was looking for what you call now recovery, you know. When I was like 17 years old, I didn't know what that word meant. I knew that the impact that snowboarding was having on my body.
Yeah.
I needed something that was in opposition to that, like some type of stretch. And I found a yoga studio. I had no idea what it was. And then I got really into yoga. And then when I moved to New York, obviously I couldn't afford to go snowboarding randomly. And so I got really into yoga. And then when I moved to Hong Kong, I finally had time to do a teacher training. Like, you know, because back in that day, it was like, go to Woodstock for a month. I'm like, I can't go to Woodstock for a month. I have a job.
Yeah.
So when I got to Hong Kong, I had time to do the teacher training. And then I found that incredible teacher I was talking to you about. And that just became, I originally was like, I'll open Yardbird, but I don't want to work in this anymore. I want to like wholeheartedly go into wellness.
Okay.
And then of course we opened Yardbird and I was like, oh no, I love this too. And like, this is also what I enjoy. And that was a really hard balance because like all of a sudden I was back in restaurant life, right? Like operating hours, working service, drinking a lot, and like so many hangovers. That made teaching yoga to me feel very inauthentic, where I was like, literally, I'm going to vomit because I'm so hungover and I'm teaching yoga. Like that doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And so slowly the F&B side sort of like took over again. I was still teaching yoga, but like it wasn't a focus. Like it was like 90% of my life was the restaurant and 10% of my life was wellness. And then I just had this internal goal to have wellness come back and be like half and half.
Yeah.
You know, and then I got into just, you know, I was just always into fitness and like curious about it and, you know, new training, new whatever. And then I got involved with friends and we opened like a gym here, which is a good learning experience. It didn't last very long, but it was fun to build the brand.
Yeah.
And then I think it just kept growing. My interest in wellness, not just fitness, but like holistic wellness kept growing as I got older. And then I started to like learn more about biohacking and you know, just like preventative medicine.
Yeah.
You know, I got really into that, and also very lucky that we live in Hong Kong where like we have that hybrid system of private and public healthcare where you can have access to like the most incredible doctors who will go on this journey with you. And so then I started working with the Upper House on their health and wellness programming. And that just snowballed into COVID. The hotels are empty. Okay, let's convert a studio. Okay, let's start Family Form, which is something I had been working on with Helen in New York. And it just kind of all like, you know, fell into place, so to say. And then I was I wanted wellness to be, it was like 20%. I wanted it to be, it was 80% F&B, 20% wellness. And I think I said in 10 years, I wanted it to be like 80% wellness and 20% F&B. And now I just kind of see it being very fluid between them, and like hospitality has evolved. I mean, honestly, now what everyone is putting their money on is wellness in the hospitality space. Like every day there's an announcement about, billions of dollars going into these fleet of wellness hotels and residencies and all this stuff. And so, I'm like, okay, well, at least I think I'm going in the right direction, because and this is beneficial for you and me and all the people that we work with. They're building these massive properties, right?
Yeah.
But like, you still need people to lead. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the most gorgeous hotel with the most beautiful cold plunges, like you still need the practitioners.
Yeah.
You still need the software. And I just think it's an exciting time to be in our position where we have the software and we are the people that are creating in these spaces, because there will be endless spaces, but there will not be endless amounts of people.
Yeah. You say on the Family Forum website that Family Forum is reimagining what it means to live well. What does living well mean to you? Like, how do you live well?
Helen and I spent months refining, our missions, our values, our purposes. Months, refining a word, changing a verb, because it can change a whole sentence. But I think like reimagining living well is being able to prioritize your own schedule, being able to spend an hour a day moving.
Yeah.
That's living well, right? Moving with your friends, moving alone, listening to music, sweating, feeling good, like really actually feeling good. Not just, the physical part and how you look if you are doing this every single day, that's a bonus. But I think it's the mental part and the emotional part and, the actual medical wellness side that is the benefit from committing to, this life of living well and self-care, as they've termed it, coined it.
We're sticking with Family Forum. It's expanding.
Yes. Hopefully.
Your plans are to expand.
Yes. Always.
Looking for trainers.
Yes.
Training trainers.
Yes.
What do you look for in a trainer? And that can mean, like even when you go to whatever class, like what do you vibe with? Because for me, like I've been a teacher for like 8 years now or so. And I love going to different studios and different classes. And I think it's hard for me to put this into words because like I'll go to a class, it can be a really good workout, but I'll think the trainer is not very good. I won't like the vibe. Yeah. Like so what
I honestly, it goes back to my favorite yoga teacher. His name is Yoganath. It's this feeling of generosity, of there's no competition, what I cannot stand and what I have run into many times is going to a group class and the teacher is seemingly competing with the people in the class, or just like there's just an energy of I don't, what does it feel like when you went to high school and like the mean girls are over there, to me, that is just like not the vibe. And there's a lot of boutique fitness, not necessarily in Hong Kong, but like around the world that's the feeling, you walk in and like, oh, you're not wearing the right brand. Oh, you're not wearing the right color. Oh, you don't have that water bottle, and you're like, that's not what this is about, To be fair, like I know a lot of people think Family Forum is crazy and everyone's intense and
everyone's wearing black,
terrified. but then they come in and people are like, oh,
Yeah.
but everyone's so nice,
Yeah.
and like, of course, people come in their like rainbow color outfit, and like over the next, if they really start coming, like slowly they come and they're just like looks like they're going to a funeral,
Yeah.
and it's like that's not the rule.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah. So what I look for in a trainer, it's like what I look for in a friend or what I look for in people that I want to spend time with. I think ultimately anyone you choose to work with means you're choosing to spend time with this person.
Yeah.
Right. And so do I like you? Like, do I think you have a good heart? Do I think you are also going to be kind to the people that come to class? Like, I don't want anyone making anyone feel bad. I don't, whether that's, trainer to trainer, trainer to client, like it's only positive. We're only all doing a good job here.
Yeah.
And, I think that's not true. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life, but, I think generally speaking, good attracts good.
Yeah.
And we have such a lovely group of people that, work out with us, that are trainers. And it's the same thing with Yardbird. Like people get hired and no one really has to fire anyone because like the team collectively will just be like, this person doesn't fit. And it's not a mean girl situation. It's just like, well, they're not carrying their weight or they don't want to do this or like they're negative. And it's almost like the group makes the decision.
Yeah.
And I think we have seen that in the studio, and there's obviously we're 3.5 years old at this stage.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, there's always people that come and go, but like the space is so small that any person with a negative energy, whether it be a trainer, trainee, or client, it doesn't take long for most people to just be like this. It's throwing everything off, So that was a really long answer. I don't know. Good people only.
Good people only.
Yeah.
We have worked out together a lot over the years, probably once a week
At
for the
least.
last 3.5 years or so.
Yeah.
But actually, you probably won't remember this, but we have worked out long before family form together. We were in the same class. We were in an F45 class in Quarry Bay.
Yeah.
And I remember because I was like, oh, that's Lindsay. That's Victor's friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember thinking, so this whole podcast is about, finding out like when we work out together, you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about the people around you.
Yeah.
And immediately, so they're like 3, 2, 1. Before they had even stopped saying 1, you were off. You were off doing whatever movement was prescribed. And before they had, so it's 3, 2, 1 countdown, like to finish the exercise, you would maximize your time. Like some people, as soon as they heard 3, they'd be like on the floor. They would stop. They wouldn't give a shit. You would be like,
Finished.
3, 2, 1, okay, done. So I feel like that from a very early stage of knowing who you are, I've always had that impression that you are someone that maximizes your time.
Yes.
And someone that doesn't fanny around. Like you're not going to fucking wait for someone to say go. You just do it. If you know what you're doing, you just do it.
Even if I don't know what I'm
Even
doing.
if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What over the years, what in our last sweat do you feel like you've learned about yourself? Because we like work out / teach every day.
Yes. I still have anxiety every time I teach. Every single time. Unless the whole class are either our trainers, or all of them are like my friends or my family, literally. If there's someone in the class that I don't know that well, or it's like their first time, I am like in my head, just like, oh my God, I hope they don't hate it. Oh, and it's like stage fright. Before we open the studio, I would like lay in bed at night and be like, why am I doing this? This was like fun in my, in my room, in my
Yeah.
house that we used to just sweat in. And I was like, what makes me think anyone is going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And that's like my own anxiety. And I really try and because I also I don't want to be teaching with that feeling, because you can, it's so
Yeah.
much about energy.
Yes.
So then, as soon as I get to the halfway point, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so there's only like 23. And it's not that I'm not enjoying myself, but I'm always worried. And I think this is like the host in me, that everyone else isn't enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way if I host a dinner party, or like people come to the restaurant.
wow.
I'm always like, it's like you throw a party and what if no one comes?
Yeah,
like that's the feeling that I have. But I think if you lose all the humility, or like you just become arrogant, that's something that I never want to have. I always want to have a little bit of fear, because that's what makes you go out there and like do the best job possible, right?
It shows that you care. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I wish I could care less.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I take it very seriously.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I know that people come, they allocate time out of their busy day to come. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great value, but I want to make sure that what we are delivering as a brand is the highest possible quality product on the market.
Yeah.
And I think it would be hard to argue that it's not.
Yeah. What, if you remember the very early days, you don't have to remember the F45 class. You don't.
I don't. Probably because I was like, what is this place?
From like one of the very first times that we worked out together in your room at home to the last workout that we've just done this week, what do you feel like you've learned about me?
I remember because we share a very close mutual friend. And so when, I don't know how it was like, maybe Victor was like, you should get Abby to train. And then I remember you came over, and I remember I gave you very honest feedback.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was like, we need to work on your flexibility. And there was nothing dishonest about that. And I remember being like, oh, and I remember telling Victor, I was like, I really hope Abby like doesn't take this the wrong way, because I want him to teach. It's just like, he's not, I mean, Morgan was on the other side of the spectrum where she was like, I could bend her in half backwards, And I remember thinking like, well, I'm just going to be honest, because what I just said about like having the best possible product in the market and not compromising. And I remember when I told you, and you were like, yeah. And you took that feedback. At least when I said it to you, you didn't seem upset. You seemed to understand what I was saying.
Yeah, no.
And I really admired that you weren't discouraged by it, and that you weren't like, all right, fuck this then. Like, I'm not going to do it. You instead went in the opposite direction and were like, I'm going to keep doing this and like get to the point where I can teach it.
Yeah.
And for somebody, like for a man at the age that we are at now, to be like, you need to be able to like move like a ballerina.
Yeah.
Most men would be like, this is never going to happen. And then I think when you when you led our training a few weeks ago, and I hadn't taken your class in a really long time.
Yeah.
And I said to you, I'm like, everything about your teaching was just so spot on.
Yeah.
And I think that is a testament to your personality in a sense that like it takes a lot to be able to take feedback and work towards something, but also to continually improve.
Yeah.
Like you're not lazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I look for in people. And I think that's why like we still talk about like what is the future and how do we keep growing this together. I
really value feedback, even when you mentioned it the other week, but only because like I work for myself, so I don't have some boss kind of like telling me, you know, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that. So any feedback I feel is good feedback, even if it's like not in a positive light. You can always learn from it and grow from it, right? So that's just the way that I kind of
You have
deal with
to.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, there is no growth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, what's next for you? Are you doing a retreat?
I'm teaching at a retreat. I'm teaching at a festival
Okay.
at Six Senses Ibiza.
Okay.
I'm going with an open mind.
Yes.
Um, and then we were planning a retreat at the same resort, but it just didn't quite work out. So I want to put together another retreat for next year, probably in Asia.
Yeah.
But besides the family forum stuff, like I'm very much into I hate the word, but obsessed with this whole midlife thing.
Yeah.
I'm in my midlife,
Mm-hmm.
assuming I live till I'm 80. Knock on wood. But really being aware of what I've done in the past 42 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to repeat anything.
Yes.
Like I want everything to be new from the experiences that I've already had. I don't want to repeat patterns that haven't served me in the past. And I'm really actively practicing that, mostly actually personal relationships and in work. Like just addressing the things that I think maybe I let happen or that I was just doing because, and I want to be more, as Amanda would say, in choice, you know, and be very aware of what I'm choosing. And I want to bring in more emotional wellness into whatever it is that I am building towards. Like obviously I love the physical aspect and I don't necessarily want to lead the emotional wellness side.
Yeah.
Maybe I will in future, I'm not sure. But I think there is magic to cracking open, you know, the ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's not
absolutely.
new. People are talking about that a lot, but like just like better communication, you know,
Amen.
all around.
Yeah.
You know, with your loved ones, with your family, with your friends, with people who aren't your friends.
Yeah.
Like learning how to communicate effectively, focusing on friendships.
Yeah.
You know, really, really building this ecosystem for people to, I don't know, this sounds so fucking stupid, but like for people to just like, you know, live their best life, you know, like reimagining what it means to live well.
Yeah.
And that has to start with, you know, being healthy.
Yeah.
Both mentally and physically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it starts with you, right? So
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Like there's just no space for excuses, you know, like you do it or you don't.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
We're almost at the end. We finish with a lightning round.
Okay. No wrong answers.
Yeah, no wrong answers.
Okay.
It's just the first thing that comes into your head.
Okay.
Just a few quick ones.
Okay.
A few quickies. Go to sweat.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Nothing else for me.
You have to say it.
Family farm.
For the people that don't know what you're talking about.
If you haven't been listening.
Go to treat meal because I never say cheat. We're not fucking cheaters.
I treat myself every day.
Okay. That's good.
McDonald's?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The McGriddle.
I've had it.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, it's amazing.
It's pretty good.
The first bite is weird, and then you're like, that was actually really good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Go to skincare products.
Laser.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like obsessed with the Lima laser. I've been using it for almost 6 months now.
What is there? I mean, like that is a very premium product.
I know.
There are other alternatives.
There are, I think, like fundamentally hydration.
Okay.
You know, living in Asia with all this humidity, growing up where I did, where you get off the airplane now and my skin scales. It's so dry.
Yeah.
Humidity, moisture. Like if there's only one thing to focus on, it's like hydration. laying in bed and doing absolutely nothing.
Mm.
Massage. Laying down and being massaged.
Anytime I'm lying down on a bed, this is going to sound weird and sick, but every time I'm lying down on a bed and someone's doing something to me, I'm relaxed. So pedicure, hair washing, whatever you like.
Yes, also me.
Yeah. Go to life hack.
Digital time management.
Go to travel destination.
Lately, Thailand.
Where specifically? Bangkok?
I really like Bangkok. I really like how they've legalized certain plants. I love the food too.
Okay. Go to weekend activity.
No plans. Like nothing. Like my go-to is like having an empty calendar.
Okay. Yes.
That's like it's a dream situation.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Go to music.
Definitely pop R&B.
Like Christina.
Like Janet Jackson or what's always Michael Jackson. Like
all the problematic ones.
All the the hyper talented weirdos.
Yeah. Go to morning routine.
Coffee with collagen immediately with all my vitamins. Obviously the AG1 has crept into my routine. And then my face laser routine, which is about 20 minutes. Yeah.
Go to book.
I'm usually reading or I'm usually listening to something that is self-improvement related, like Esther Perel is a favorite, Brene Brown.
Yeah.
I love reading. I love listening to biographies or stories narrated by the author. You know, like honestly, Bob Iger's book is such an incredible listen or read. Also, just listened to Matthew McConaughey's book. That was amazing.
Oh.
That was incredible.
I was going to say Jessica Simpson.
I listened to the Britney one, but that was so depressing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I like to read things that I can pull things from that are useful.
Yeah.
You know, and like that almost reiterate probably what I'm thinking, but it articulates it better. You know?
Okay.
Self-improvement.
Yeah. How do people find you on socials or
my name?
Your name, Lindsay Jang. Lindsay Jang, thank you so much for being here and chatting to me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Abby.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you for joining us on Move, Sweat, Discover. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.